Welcome one and all to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 211. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the last podcast of February 2023. And I hope you guys are all doing alright, because I've been doing pretty good for the last couple of days, because I've had the last few days off of work, which has been absolutely wonderful, because I've both been doing things and absolutely nothing at the same time. It's mainly been gaming and simply just watching things like videos, catching up on things, and just, relaxing for the most part. Well deserved, I think, if I do say so myself. But I did manage to do one new thing for the most part. I did watch a brand new film, the first film of 2023 that I watched, although technically this film came out in 2022 last year for America, but that was literally December, so let's just count it as a film for this year, and that is of course going to be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And honestly, I thought this film was fantastic. I completely understand why people are loving this film, raving about it, making all the memes, and there is a lot of discussion about how good this film is, because it's justified. It's a surprisingly good film, and I'm really happy to see a, franchise / spin-off get a sequel after over 10 years, and it actually be fantastic, because the original Puss in Boots film was fine, but this is the more superior film in almost every single way. Like, everything about this film is honestly fantastic. Like I previously said, I would highly recommend going to see it, because it does a lot of things that are very interesting, more particularly the animation style, having a slightly more cel-shaded-ish look, although there are some nice surprises in there as well. The characters, I think, are honestly some of the strongest I think we've seen in maybe any animated film in a long while, for the most part. I mean, some really, really good villains. I think if you spend a lot of time on the internet, or if you've been on the internet for the last couple of months, you probably know who these characters are. Try and avoid spoilers as much as you can, because the less you know, the better with this kind of film. And just everything was just knocked out of the freaking park with this film. Once again, I highly, highly, highly recommend going to see this film. I know it's been a massive success in the box office, and I want to see it continuously do well, especially given that it's actually a good film with so many elements that are both simple but done effectively well, that you unfortunately don't really see in a lot of films nowadays. Like, it just having, once again, good story, good characters, and other great aspects that are missing in a lot of other films, unfortunately. And this is once again DreamWorks showing Disney how it's done, so I couldn't be more than happy to see its success, and hopefully its continued success, mainly with DreamWorks in terms of their next couple of films, which I believe I think it's another Trolls film, which I've never been a big fan of those films, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll hit another home run with this one to some extent. But other than that, I haven't been doing much else other than playing a game, but hopefully I'll have that beat by the next podcast. And I'm kind of rushing to get this game finished before a couple other games do release in the next coming weeks and months. But sticking with games, we did have a Nintendo Direct on the 8th of February 2023, and I must say it was a pretty good one for the most part. It wasn't as, let's say, questionable as I think it was one of the previous main ones, where there were a lot of farm simulator RPG games, and a lot of people definitely noticed that and kind of memed on it for the most part. But here it was definitely more of a focus on games we knew about, and a few newer games for the most part. And I just kind of want to go over a couple of the things that kind of caught my eye, or that were worth talking about for the most part. The first one, obviously, we got to discuss the big one, or the next big game that is going to be released this year, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, which is the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and also the sequel to the game that lesser AAA studios have been copying for the last 5 years. It's a bit ridiculous. Like, every open world now has like a glider, yet Breath of the Wild is still the only game that did it the best, in my opinion. So this is obviously, it's more of the same for the most part, which is fine, as I'm glad that the art style kind of remains untouched. Once again, a lovely kind of cel-shaded-ish look, kind of cartoony. Its style is a little bit more derivative from I know there was one they had on the Wii, which I know everyone hated. That's the funny thing about Zelda fans and the Zelda games, is that every game that comes out that isn't, I guess, Ocarina of Time or the very first game is just the worst game ever. I can't remember which that one. I know it was like the one that had a bird in it or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm liking the look of the more like sky environments, as well as like the multiple ways you can traverse the air and the sky. I think that's pretty cool. You kind of see Link on a sort of like hover thing, which he kind of has to move or like pull, push or whatever, which I think is an interesting mechanic. I do like the whole idea of there being a literal world in the sky. It's very fantasy. It's very Zelda, so it does fit the theme for the most part. It does look good. I mean, I haven't played Breath of the Wild. I don't know if this game is going to be as good as it, if it's just going to be more of the same, if it's going to really challenge things, do things for the most part. And I mean, that weird reversed music song still kind of makes my skin crawl. I don't know what's up with it. It's like Ganon being brought back or something. So I do feel like there may be a more of a, like a darker or an interesting twist coming our way in terms of how he's depicted. He's as like some zombie being resurrected, which is pretty cool, pretty dark for Zelda. Not the darkest it's ever been. That if you want a dark Zelda game, go and play the best one, being Majora's Mask. And me just saying that has just enraged like millions of people. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. Maybe by the time I get a Switch, I would have played Breath of the Wild and be ready to play this game. So fingers crossed for the most part. The next game we have is going to be, I think it's DecaPolice. This is, I think, coming from Level 5, who have done a couple other smaller games, mainly for Nintendo systems. And yeah, this is a cute game. It's really cute. It borrows a lot of elements from other games like the Pokemon series or the Persona series, while kind of making its own kind of name for itself to some extent. I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't feel like just a copycat of Persona. It just feels like, oh, they've clearly been inspired by Persona for the most part. Like, I've always loved like detective games, as you can do so much within a story in this medium, you know, because it has a very like interactive approach, like, you know, walk over here, analyze this, or rotate this. And I hope that this game does have those mechanics that I think every detective game really should have, especially given that those mechanics are kind of shoehorned into games that don't really need them. I'm sure if anyone's played a AAA game that came out in the last, let's say, 10 years, whenever you pick up an item, you can just always pointlessly rotate them, which doesn't make any kind of sense within the concept of the world itself. Like, you know, you don't see the character's hand doing it. It's just, you know, it's just weird. But yeah, I do like how this game is taking a slightly more flashy superhero approach, with the main character kind of like doing his like Ace Attorney, like pointing and judging, and, you know, the way he kind of uses his superpowers to throw the handcuffs on a person. I think that's pretty cool. It's a nice animation, and even just having them like, you know, turn into like a cat because a hacker hacked the virtual metaverse they're living in. You know, that's a cute idea. It's funny. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it has a lot of heart and spirit, and that's kind of the kind of thing I want to see in games more. You don't see that too much. Too many games nowadays are a little bit too depressing. That like they're trying way too hard to be like sad stories, and, you know, when every Sony game is just sad man, you know, it gets boring. So yeah, fingers crossed for this one once again. Also, we have Samba de Amigo, Party Central. Finally, more Samba de Amigo. He's finally back, and it looks good. Like, it's essentially a party rhythm game, kind of dating back to, I can't remember if it was the game. No, it's the Sega Dreamcast era. Was, I think, his first debut, and then he had another game on the Wii, and he's kind of disappeared for the most part, which never made a lot of sense why he was never brought back for like a Wii U game. But he's finally and appropriately back on the Switch. I'm sure plenty of people have been wondering when he was going to get his game, and here it is. And it looks, I mean, the only thing that bothers me about this game is that it kind of looks like they've taken a little bit of inspiration aesthetically from the Just Dance series, how they've incorporated like neon lighting and kind of giving it a darker, like kind of literal flashing lights approach, which I don't really like. I've always liked the more slightly flamboyant, like party, carnival, like Spanish, Mexican theming that a lot of the backgrounds and the characters have. So I hope that really isn't absent in this one. Online battles, they're a plus. Being able to customize your character or the monkey. I'm not sure if Samba the Amiga is actually the monkey or it's just the name of the series, but, being able to put him in some pretty stylish-ish, modern-ish, 90s kind of inspired clothes, I think is a really neat touch, because you can lock those behind progression and, kind of ranking for the most part. And like the backgrounds are beautiful, I will give them that, despite me saying they look like Just Dance, like how they have like almost like a void background where nothing exists. They are nice. You do see some great characters in them, and they are very creative. It's just nice to see like these oddly and creatively playful characters in 1080p. It looks nice. Aesthetically, it looks nice. And I know he kind of has a bit of a cult following, so hopefully the people who do actually play this game or wanted this game do get what they want for the most part. And honestly, they better release Maraca controllers for this game. Like, they'd honestly be stupid not to. I know the original Dreamcast version of the game did have those. They were bright red with, I think, yellow zigzag patternings. I would love to see them do something like that, or something for the most part. Even just a novelty Maraca with his logo on it would be enough, but here's hoping. I know we're in a recession and we don't really do gimmicky things like that. It's all about like the art book, the steel book, and the statue. But come on, Nintendo/Sega, let's show them how it's done for the most part. But yeah, that's kind of it roughly for games. There wasn't too much else I was really interested in. It was kind of just a bunch of stuff that has already been released or exists. We do have one interesting thing to talk about, and that is going to be Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games being on the Switch now. So this is an interesting concept where essentially they're going to be releasing, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games for you to be able to play on Nintendo Switch if you have the online service. And these are like the key words I'm trying to highlight is can play an online service. Like, it's great that people will be able to play these games from the Game Boy era or the Game Boy's like very rich library, but I don't understand why we can't download them or even buy them. It honestly just seems like a missed opportunity here. Like, I think Nintendo would stand to make more money releasing like 3 or maybe even a whole series on just one cartridge, because I know they can do that. Despite it still being a small cartridge, technology has come a long way. I'm pretty sure most like GBA games, if you were to take the whole file size of it, I'm pretty sure they're no more than a gig for the most part. And obviously, once again, technology expanded. I know the cartridge of the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advances were quite long. This one's quite small. They could very easily do this, even if they wanted to do like a mini series where it's like Game Boy Color Collection Volume 1 to 9, which contains like 3 games on each. People would lap that up. I would lap that up for the most part. I would love to be able to play and have some of these games physically, but no. Or I should say more accurately, Nintendo, they just want constant revenue and justification for their online service, which I think is a really scummy thing to do, because they are once again kind of weaponizing nostalgia for the most part and not really being a part of video game preservation. Although this will technically stop a lot of people from pirating and emulating these games, it doesn't really paint them in a good picture, because they are gatekeeping their library once again. Like, they have every right to. They do own these games, but here's the thing. If they just decide to just not release a GBA game, then people still won't be able to play these games. Or if they decide to go and fix one of these games, it's quite problematic. And this is why, once again, video game preservation is so important, because people like Nintendo are just absolutely terrible at doing it. I mean, what happens when they move away from Switch? Will the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy system player, whatever the hell this thing is called, will that transition to the next system, or is it going to be something that's going to be locked on the Switch until the Switch's online is taken off? Like, this feels like a temporary money-making, not necessarily scam, but system for the most part. I'm going to have to put a hard pass on this game. I would honestly rather just spend a few £100 getting the last few GBA games I want physically, as opposed to having to pay £15, £8 a month just to be able to play like a GBA game that I was currently playing. And that's another thing that I don't think they've actually addressed. So what happens if I go and get the online service for Nintendo Switch and go and download, let's say, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga? Let's say I get halfway through the game and then decide I don't want online. Yeah, I can't play that game anymore, which is a massive negative. But then what happens to my save data? Is my save data just stored on the cloud service until I guess, continue to get the online service? Like, does it stay on my memory card, but I can't access it or any sense? Like, how does this work? They should have been a lot more clearer with this, as opposed to, well, yeah, not being clear for the most part. But yeah, that's just kind of like my rant about this whole system. I really don't like it. And I know it's the kind of thing that Sony is trying to do, using nostalgia of their older games, older, better games, mind you, and kind of just trying to entice you to actually constantly keep paying that subscription fee. As Al made the very good point in the previous podcast, we are currently in a recession. People are going to be looking to start cutting, any sense of money that is leaving their bank account. That includes services. So this really isn't going to do them any favors, and it really just kind of spits in the face of people who like the GBA for the most part. We got some trailers to talk about, some weird ones. I won't take long with this, but the first one we got is for Paint, which I guess is a pseudo origin story or biography of the late Bob Ross, the very famous TV painter who most people know of, given his very iconic look, his slight resurgence that he had during the previous decade when they actually started live streaming his older videos, and I know they upload them on YouTube. He has remained a very iconic character throughout the ages. And it feels like they're kind of just parodying Bob Ross's legacy in the worst way, like by making him like almost a sex icon, which really isn't funny. Like, I don't find the idea of women, no matter what their age, kind of like swooning at the sight of him. Like, I'm pretty sure like his series wasn't that popular, and he himself wasn't that popular with the ladies. I'm sure some people did like him and maybe did fantasize about him, but I doubt to this extent, to the point where a woman is getting like flustered over the idea of being able to touch his slipper. I think that's silly, and once again, just not funny for the most part. I will give him this. Owen Wilson. That's our next trailer. Owen Wilson, he does look the part. He does actually look like Bob Ross. I think his cadence and how he kind of sometimes talks does work for Bob Ross's very soft-spoken voice that he had back when he did the TV show. I think that does work. Like, I feel like just making a film based on like meme presence, it just doesn't work. Like, there's no real heart to this. It just kind of feels like a cash grab for the most part, and a very late cash grab at that for the most part. Like, I would honestly be more interested in having a actual, documentary biography about the guy to learn more about him, as opposed to this weird jokey wink parody of the man, much like we had the very good documentary about Mr. Robinson a couple years ago. And yeah, like, I mean, I will give it one other point. I do like it's kind of blurred, kind of having like the Vaseline on the lens kind of look. It kind of gives it a nostalgic aesthetic, which I think is pretty cool for the most part. It kind of makes sense, and also given the thematical theming with it being painting and arts, I'll give it that for the most part. Next trailer we have is for Stray, which is going to be the Red Band trailer. And yeah, 2001 called. It wants its film back. Like, this is the definition of a novelty film. Like, is this a film for children? Like, who is this for? Like, the story as it goes is about like a dog and his, I guess, abusive owner who just wants to get rid of him, and he becomes a stray and decides to get revenge on him. It would have been funny if I hadn't already seen this before. And it really does feel like a product of the time. Like, it feels like someone in a studio just found this film in a drawer and went, we can release this. I really don't get it. Like, the animation on the dog's mouth moving is still just as primitive as it was back then. I honestly would have much preferred them to just have the dog speak. We hear their inner monologue for the most part. I think that would have been much better, but obviously it's Hollywood. We got to literally spell out the fact that these dogs can talk. It's so dumb. I'm honestly surprised that people like Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx are in this. It's bizarre. Like, this obviously just was like a quick paycheck for them. It's, oh my god, it's just shocking how bad this is. It wasn't funny at all, and I can very easily see this being one of the biggest flops of 2023, given that it's a film that was actually released in 2001. But yeah, not much to really say about this. Next film and last trailer we have to talk about is for Fast X. Yeah, 2021 called. It wants its film back. It's baffling. Again, that's why I've put these two films together. It's not Fast and Furious 10. No. It's Fast X, because this film should be taken seriously as one man throws another man through two floors. Like, come on, guys. I've never really grasped the whole idea of this film series having some of the most unrealistic and dumbest scenes and premises in a mainstream film, and for people to accept that and to not question that and to not laugh at it. Like, I can understand, because I've seen people kind of say that these films, they're not really about racing, they're more in line with superhero films, which makes sense. There is literally a scene where Dwayne Johnson has a cast on his, I think maybe broken arm, and he flexes it off. That's funny, and that would be a great scene in a comedy film. But here they're trying to, they always like this weird sense of seriousness. And it's way more prevalent in this trailer, where they're really hammering down the whole family aspect with this, which that in of itself became a massive meme. I'm sure most people have seen the clips of just the guys wearing the black vests, sunglasses, just, bald heads, just all standing there going, family, family, family. You can't really take a film series or like a concept or a line like that, especially said from Vin Diesel, when it's such an overplayed concept of its own series, seriously anymore. And the fact that they're really trying to like make you feel like sad, and they're trying, it's the legacy, it's the 10th film, and all the characters coming back, and we're going up against our toughest enemy yet, being Jason Momoa, who I think is one of the biggest assholes in Hollywood right now. He's trying way too hard to be, or I guess the film's trying way too hard to make him intimidating. He's too much of a pretty boy to be intimidating. I've seen capybaras who are scarier than him, and it just comes across as stupid. Like, his performance is very hammy, and I don't buy it at all. I've never bought any of his performances, and especially here he comes across as very transparent. It's just ridiculous for the most part. Like, he shouldn't be smiling. He should be dead serious. And it's obviously very laughable how they've tried to retcon him into the lore of the series, as if to say, like, the main characters of this film have wronged him in every sort of way by stealing the vault and all that kind of stuff. Really try hard. Like, really try hard. I mean, this series has massive problems with continuity and characters appearing, disappearing, dying, and all that kind of stuff. And this trailer just comes across as a huge mess. And also, thanks for spoiling the whole film. Like, geez. Like, they showed off, I'm guessing, what is meant to be the climax, or one of the most shocking scenes, where I guess Vin Diesel, his car gets harpooned, and he somehow manages to crash both the helicopters. It looks ridiculous. I guess technically it would be possible to some extent, but I highly doubt that the people making this film have actually looked into the science for the most part, or if it's even plausible. I doubt it, because they're just assuming that people are going to watch this film and just like mindlessly munch on popcorn while going, yeah, the family. But yeah, the only good thing about this film is that it confirms that Tyler, the Creator's newest album will be out really, really soon, because I know there's a weird theory or pattern where he releases his new album a couple months after a Fast and Furious film comes out. So there's that to look forward to, at least. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be the podcast. There wasn't much to really say about a lot of these trailers, especially the last two, Jeez. But yeah, as it was Valentine's Day a couple of days ago, which is a holiday I personally don't believe in, we have the video of the episode, which is coming from Ashnikko. I believe that's how you say her name. Yeah, Ashnikko, excuse me. I think my spelling kind of tripped me up. Yeah. So we have Ashnikko with "You Make Me Sick," which is, I think, a very appropriate song and title given its relation to the aftermath of Valentine's Day and pretty much every relationship that has no real backbone to it. So yeah, that is pretty much going to be the podcast for the most part. And yeah, I guess I'll end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.